This is Ted at Valley of the Dolly. I just celebrated my first birthday. What do I mean by that? I have multiple myeloma, and I just celebrated my first year after having a stem cell transplant. So it's common for people who have had a stem cell transplant to consider it kind of a rebirth. So I'm going to rewind real quickly and just give you just a quick update. I went to the doctor just for a physical a few years ago, and they ran some blood tests, normal blood tests, and said, something doesn't really seem right. We're going to send you for some more blood tests. And when I came back in for the results, I found myself in the oncology department, which was a shock to me, and my heart sank. And I waited for the hammer to fall. I waited to understand exactly what had happened to me, what had brought this on, because you're not expecting it. And I was told that it was suspected that I may have multiple myeloma, and it was confirmed when they did a bone marrow sample. So they basically it's like a nail gun into your hip bone, and they pull out bone marrow, and they test that bone marrow. And since then, I've had a number of those. And fun fact, they're really not very comfortable. But there's no way around it. You have to do this. So, initially you have a lot of fear because you don't understand if this is the end or if this is something that you can successfully treat. And the doctor explained to me that this is something that I can successfully treat. I had a lot of misconceptions, I think, about what the disease was. It's not a common type of cancer. And I never in my life would have suspected that I would have come down with it. I thought, I live such a healthy lifestyle. I like to exercise. I like to be active. But yes, it was a shock to me. And there are all these things that you don't know. So it's not so much what you know about it, it's what you don't know. It's the fear that you have, and it's understanding and figuring out exactly what's going on with you and what's going wrong. So I was lucky enough to have been diagnosed significantly in advance of requiring treatment, so they were able to monitor it. And unfortunately, before I started treatment, which is very common, I did have some bone issues and I required spinal surgery, which to me was very unfortunate. But then right after I started chemotherapy, and then when that first set of chemotherapy was done, I went in for the stem cell transplant, which was a year ago this week. So that's why they say it's my first birthday. And before I went in, they gave me a drug, and I injected myself for a couple weeks with this drug to pull the stem cells out of the bone marrow and into the blood. And it's kind of like they're ringing the bones. So you get this kind of pulsing, kind of ringing sensation. It's kind of painful. It's not comfortable, but it was very successful, and it pulled the stem cells out, and they connect you with, it's almost like dialysis. They connect you in one arm, it goes through the machine and then back into the other arm. They collect all the stem cells and they freeze them. Then a couple weeks later, I went in for my stem cell transplant at the Champalimode Foundation here in Lisbon. I was the third person to go there. And the first full day that I was there, they gave me melphalan, which is an incredibly strong chemotherapy drug. And that's why I lost all my hair. As you can see, my weight dropped into the 140s in pounds. And I'll give you the kilogram version of that. And you lose so much weight, and all of these things happen because the melphalan basically acts like it completely wipes out your immune system. So even the biome in your gut, the bacteria there, it becomes an enemy to your system. And you get, for me, I got pneumonia, a number of other side effects that had to be treated. You're not allowed to touch the floor. There are all these requirements while you're there. I was there for 19 days before I was well enough to go home. And like they tell you when you go in, you're going to come out feeling much more ill than you did going in. And that's definitely true. So I stayed in isolation for 100 days, and then I had a few more months of chemotherapy. And then I was able to kind of rejoin society. So it's a very big transition. So really for the first 6 months coming out of this, I isolation or still really careful to be around people because you're still kind of weak and your immune system is weak. And so it was, you find that their hardest moments physically and hardest moments mentally. It's difficult to be in an isolation room in the hospital for 19 days where nobody can come in. I was allowed to have my partner come in for an hour a day, not to touch me, but to be fully garbed on the other side of the room for an hour for a number of days. That was wonderful when I was up to that point, not allowed to see anybody. And all the food has to be brought in frozen microwave packages and mic'd, and then you have to eat it there inside the room. You're not allowed out of the room. The room is basically vacuum sealed. It's a very strange experience. So you have the mental part of it about being isolated in the hospital, and then also when you come out, not really being able to see anything. Physically, the hardest part is just the fact that you come out so weak, and you really need to focus on rebuilding your strength once you're done with that second round of chemotherapy after the stem cell transplant and isolation. You just find, it's like a constant battle of going into treatment, coming out, going back into treatment, and then working to try to come back to a level of normalcy and activity that you can maintain. But I found that there was hope, and I think that was so important. I was truly lucky enough to come out of the initial chemotherapy successfully, that it brought down the disease low enough that I was allowed to go in for a stem cell transplant because the chemotherapy was successful. And the stem cell transplant brought down the level of multiple myeloma down to an undetectable level. It doesn't mean that it cured the disease. There is no cure for it, but it brought it down to a level that it wasn't detectable in the blood. Then, after doing a few more months of chemotherapy to lock that in, then you go on a maintenance level of the chemo medication. And the goal is to keep that level as low as possible for as long as possible. So they say 80% of the people who successfully go through a stem cell transplant will have at least 4 years before they require additional treatment. And if somebody else has facts about that, they may want to include that in the comments below. My personal goal is 20 years before I go back in for treatment. Is it achievable? I think so. Will it? We'll have to wait and find out, right? But those were, kind of the key milestones really for me were completing that first round of chemotherapy, having it be successful, being given my stem cells back, being discharged from the hospital, and then successfully completing the isolation and the next rounds of chemo to where I thought the treatment was truly noted as a complete success, as best it could be. And I will be forever grateful for the doctors and the nurses for making that possible, and for the treatment to really have been a success. Now that, now I really have to look at what do I want in my life moving forward. So I think you have to start looking at how your priorities change. Because even if you were a health fanatic before, the focus on your health is different coming out of this kind of treatment. The goal coming out of this is to rebuild your strength and to focus on making your life physically active, connected with people, and engaging. And those are 3 things that have become very important to me coming out of this rounds of treatment. So I focus on my health. I find it very important to focus on the relationships, because for some people, they just give you space. And while you're going through all of this, you may not see them or hear very much from them. But that doesn't mean that they've abandoned you. It just means that you need to look at rebuilding some of those friendships. They've given you space for you to go through this, where other people have been there by your side through the entire process. And you want to continue strengthening those relationships. You want to focus on the relationship you have with your partner and with your family and with your friends. And you find that that has true value for you moving forward. And how you view time is different also, I think, because I view time now not as something that's just infinite and you can sit around and waste this day or waste that day, but you want to find at least something in every day that brings you joy or brings you value. And it can be something as simple as making something different for breakfast or going for a walk and seeing and exploring something around your neighborhood, to going on a day trip or some kind of work that you find important. It's important that you find value in those things and that you identify those things that don't have a lot of value and you try to minimize them. And you also realize that you can't get rid of everything that you dislike. It's just not possible. You can't get rid of everything that you feel is kind of a pain to do, but you find that you want to prioritize the things that are important to you and things that bring you joy and bring you value. So when I look at what mattered before and what matters now, I find, you don't go back to 100% the way things were before, and your health is not at 100% any longer. It changes, your body changes after this kind of treatment. So I focus on my health. You need to find a physical activity, some kind, for me that's swimming, something that can continue to help build your body. They prefer to have something that's very low impact, and I find that that works. Swimming works for me. It is one of the few things that it doesn't cause back pain from the back surgery. It doesn't cause that kind of uncomfortable feeling the way some other physical activities can. So I find that that's very successful. And you focus on your health, you focus on your friendships and your relationships. And you have to realize you have that resilience, that patience, and that acceptance, right? So you have resilience and you realize that every hurdle that you faced in treatment, you were able to overcome. And I can't tell you how important having a positive attitude is when you go through a treatment like this. It is very important for you to focus on making this treatment as successful as possible. Don't focus on what might be a negative outcome. You want to focus on making this treatment as successful as possible. And when you hit a hurdle, when you have to go in to have bone marrow drawn or something else that's unpleasant, that this is just one of the hurdles you need to overcome to make this treatment successful, because you need to keep your eye on the goal, which is a successful treatment. And that means getting through all of these different stages. So you need to be resilient and you need to find a way to make these hurdles something that you can overcome and keep moving forward with. The other thing is you need to have patience. The treatment process takes a long time and it is not fast and it is not always pleasant, right? So you need to really have patience and you need to focus again on what's important, which is a successful outcome. And you need to cut some slack to your partner and to your friends around you who are only trying to help you, because you may find yourself getting frustrated or exhausted, angry at what's happening, but you need to keep a positive attitude because you need this treatment to be successful. And the third is really acceptance. And the reason I mention acceptance is because you have to understand that your life will not be the same after treatment compared to what it was before treatment. Things are different. I used to love to play tennis. Right now I can't play tennis. Does that mean my life comes to an end? No. But you have to accept that things are different and you need to pivot and find joy and find happiness in the things and contentment in the things that you can do, and to make the most of that. So yes, you'll become exhausted more often. Yes, my energy level is maybe 75% of what it used to be, but I can make the most of that 75% And a lot of people may not notice that there is an issue. And so, yes, you try to make it as transparent as possible. And by that, I mean, you want to live your life. Yes, the disease is still there. Yes, you put it off to the side. Yes, you still have maintenance drugs you need to take, but you are able to focus now on that friendship and have that be the primary focus and not the disease right now. You've gone through the treatments, you've been successful at it. You can consider that a victory. Focus on the relationships, focus on lowering your level of anxiety, focus on removing those negative thoughts and negative feelings of anger, whatever it is. If you get angry about something, really stop and think about whether or not being angry about this has any value. Because you only have so much time before you may need to go back into treatment, and you need to make the most of these years that you have. So I really think it is about resilience, it's about patience, and it's about acceptance. And your goal is to make this as successful as possible and to enjoy that time you have now that you've been successful in your treatment. So somebody had asked me, well, what does a bright future look like for you? Well, a bright future for me really means finding things in the future and in my planning that I've wanted to do, and to make those goals something that's achievable and interesting and fun. So there may be small trips you want to take. There may be activities you wanted to do. There may be work that you want to do. There may be, it can be any sort of thing. There may be foods you want to explore, foods you want to make. There may be sports or activities you want to participate in. That as long as the doctor has signed off on some of these, you're going to find getting back into activities becomes so important. Keeping yourself isolated after coming out of, that 100 days of isolation, it's really important that you rebuild those relationships. It doesn't mean going to large parties or large concerts where you may contract COVID or something. It really means getting out there and experiencing friendships, even if they are on a smaller level, and protecting yourself in larger crowds and groups, but living your life and making sure that you enjoy those days as they come about. So yes, you're going to live with uncertainty and you don't know how long this will last. I plan on making this last as long as I possibly can. And I suggest that if you're unfortunate enough to need to go through this treatment also, that you do the same and you find a way to make the treatment successful and move on with your life. And that's my goal now, is to really explore making more videos focused on things that I really love and enjoy. And I think that a lot of those topics will resonate with a lot of people viewing them. And if you have suggestions, or if there are other things that you think might have been relevant to some of the videos that I made, please go ahead and leave those suggestions and I'll try to incorporate them moving forward. This is Ted at Valley of Dolly. I look forward to talking with you again soon. Thank you.